Let me tell you about the day everything went sideways. My name is Jack Reilly, professional screw-up and apparently humanity's most unlikely savior. Before you start thinking I'm some buff military guy or genius scientist, nope. I'm a medical equipment sales representative from Cleveland who can barely change a tire without YouTube tutorials. The invasion started on a Tuesday. Not a dramatic, Michael Bay-style alien arrival with massive spaceships blocking out the sun. These guys were more precise, clean, terrifyingly efficient. They dropped into major cities worldwide like silent, angular droplets of mercury, their ships looking less like battle cruisers and more like geometric art installations that happened to be capable of molecular disintegration. I was stuck in Milwaukee that morning, presenting a new ultrasound machine to a regional hospital network. Mid-pitch. Every electronic device in the conference room went dead. Smartphones, laptops, the overhead projector, everything just blinked out. Then we heard it. A low, resonant hum that seemed to vibrate directly into our bone marrow. Well, that's not normal, I muttered, which pretty much summarized my entire professional approach to crisis management. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, silvery shapes were materializing. Wajano, tall, impossibly symmetrical beings with skin that looked like polished chrome and movement so fluid it seemed more like liquid than solid matter. Their technology was so advanced it made our most sophisticated military hardware look like children's science fair projects. Within minutes, global communications collapsed. Military responses were neutralized before they could even launch a coordinated defense. These aliens, who we'd later learned called themselves the Nexus Collective, had weapons that didn't just destroy. They systematically shut down any technological or mechanical system they targeted. What they didn't know, what nobody knew at that moment, was that humans have something special running through our veins. And I don't mean courage or some metaphorical nonsense. I mean literal, actual biochemical weirdness that would make their hyper-advanced technology look like a cheap calculator. My contribution to humanity's survival started with a paper cut, a stupid, tiny slice on my index finger during that presentation, a drop of blood that would change everything. The Nexus Collective assumed Earth would fall quickly, silent, efficiently. They had calculations, probabilities, strategies mapped out with cold, algorithmic precision. Spoiler alert. They didn't account for human unpredictability, or blood. Definitely not the blood. My name is Jack Reilly, and this is how we saved the planet, completely by accident. The Nexus Collective didn't just invade. They surgically dismantled human civilization like a kid taking apart a cheap watch. Their weapons were beyond anything our military could comprehend, electromagnetic pulse technology that made our most advanced electronics look like paperweights. Tanks? Disabled? Planes? Grounded. Communication networks? Obliterated faster than my dating prospects. I watched from the hospital conference room as silvery figures moved through the streets below. They weren't even walking. Exactly, and more like gliding. Floating. Each movement calculated with mathematical precision that would make a supercomputer look spontaneous. This is not happening, I muttered, pressing my bleeding finger against a tissue. Nope. Definitely a stress-induced hallucination. Maybe I ate some bad airport sushi. That's when things got weird. And I mean truly spectacularly weird. As a Nexus combat unit approached the hospital, something extraordinary happened. Their sleek, chrome-like weaponry began to sputter. First just a slight flicker, then a complete power down. One moment they were advancing with terrifying efficiency. The next they were standing there like confused robots whose batteries had been yanked. The first alien, tall, impossibly symmetrical, with what I can only describe as a face that looked like liquid mercury, trying to maintain a humanoid shape, raised its weapon. Nothing. Another tried, still nothing. My inner monologue was running at full panic mode. Great. I'm going to die. And I never even got to see the new Marvel movie, or finish that Netflix series, or learn how to make a decent souffle. But then I noticed something. The drop of blood from my paper cut, the one I'd absent-mindedly pressed against the tissue, was sitting on the conference room table, and wherever that droplet had touched, The nearby electronics were functioning. No way, I whispered. Outside, confusion erupted. The Nexus units were communicating in what sounded like mathematical frequencies, sharp, precise clicks and hums that probably translated to something like system malfunction, or what the actual quantum calculation is happening. I pressed my bleeding finger against my laptop. It flickered to life. Then the overhead projector. Then the conference room's phone system. My brain was doing somersaults. My blood, was somehow neutralizing their technology. The hospital was a chaos of fleeing medical staff and patients, but I was frozen, staring at my finger, then at the window, then back at my finger. One coherent thought emerged through the panic. This is either the most incredible discovery in human history, or I'm having the world's most elaborate nervous breakdown. A Nexus unit turned directly toward the conference room. Its mercurial face seemed to scan, calculate, reassess. I did the only thing that made sense in that moment. I stuck out my tongue. Look, when potentially world-ending aliens are staring you down, sometimes sass is the only appropriate response. The alien unit's weapon remained dead. No pulse. No energy. Nothing. My internal commentary was in overdrive. Of all the people in the world to potentially save humanity, it had to be me, Jack Reilly. The guy who once got fired from a telemarketing job for accidentally sending a sales pitch to his own mother. The universe clearly had a sense of humor. I needed to figure this out. And fast. Because something told me the Nexus Collective was not the type to appreciate being inconvenienced by a random medical equipment salesman's mysterious blood. The first step, understanding what the hell was happening. Second step, try not to die in the process. Piece of cake, right? 2 days after the initial invasion, I found myself in the most unlikely situation possible, sitting in a makeshift research lab with Dr. Elena Rodriguez, a brilliant immunologist who looked like she hadn't slept in a week, and Marcus Greene, a former Navy SEAL turned high school chemistry teacher who was currently using a whiteboard to draw what looked like both a molecular structure and an elaborate stick-figure battle scene. "It's not just blood," Elena muttered, her fingers flying across a microscope's controls. "It's the specific combination of proteins, mitochondrial DNA, and what I'm calling quantum interference markers that's causing the technological disruption." Marcus added a dramatic explosion drawing to his whiteboard diagram. "So basically, human blood is like a biological EMP weapon. More like a living anti-technology force field," I interjected, "which sounds cool until you realize I'm basically a walking tech killer." The research was wild. We'd discovered that something in human blood, a unique protein complex that seemed to exist only in our species, generated a specific electromagnetic frequency that completely neutralized advanced technological systems. The Nexus Collective's technology was so precisely calibrated that our biological noise essentially scrambled their entire operational matrix. "Think of it like this," Elena explained, drawing a complex diagram that looked more like abstract art than science. "Their technology is like a perfectly tuned instrument. Our blood is basically a tone-deaf drunk playing a kazoo right next to that instrument. It doesn't just disrupt, it completely destroys the system's ability to function." Marcus nodded, adding another stick figure to his whiteboard. "So we're talking about a genetic quirk that makes human blood the ultimate technological kryptonite." "Essentially," I said, "humanity's superpower is being gloriously, magnificently messy at a molecular level." The implications were staggering. The Nexus Collective had spent centuries developing technology so advanced it could disable entire planetary defense systems in milliseconds. And here we were, with a biological cheat code they couldn't predict or prevent. Elena pulled up some initial test results. The blood samples from different human populations showed variations in the effect, but the core mechanism remained consistent. Somehow our evolutionary path had created a biological defense mechanism that was completely invisible to any technological scanning method. "It's like our immune system evolved to fight technology," Marcus mused, "which is insane. Most species develop defenses against biological threats. We apparently developed a defense against mechanical ones." I couldn't help but laugh. Only humans would accidentally develop a biological weapon against alien tech. The research continued. We needed to understand the mechanism, develop a way to weaponize it, and figure out how to protect vulnerable populations. Every blood type showed slightly different interference patterns. O-negative seemed particularly effective, which Marcus found hilarious. Universal donor blood is now universal tech destroyer, he chuckled. Mother Nature has a seriously twisted sense of humor. Elena was less amused and more fascinated. This could be the most significant biological discovery in human history. We're talking about a genetic trait that turns human blood into a living, breathing technological disruptor. Our team was small but determined. A medical equipment salesman, a chemistry teacher, and an immunologist. Sounds like the setup to a terrible joke, but we might just be humanity's best hope. One question, I said, looking at the increasingly complex diagrams. How exactly do we turn my blood can kill alien tech into we save the entire planet? Marcus grinned and added another explosion to his whiteboard, one messy, complicated step at a time. Weaponizing human blood turned out to be exactly as complicated as it sounds, which is to say, completely bonkers. We can't just go around throwing blood at alien technology, Elena argued, pinching the bridge of her nose. We were huddled in an underground research facility that used to be a Cold War-era nuclear bunker. Apparently, those paranoid Cold War planners were good for something after all. Marcus was already sketching out what he called our bloody assault plan, a diagram that looked more like a deranged connect-the-dots puzzle than a military strategy. Actually, I interjected, I'm pretty sure we can, and we're going to. Maria. Our plan was simultaneously brilliant and absolutely insane. We'd discovered that dried blood samples maintained their technological disruptive properties. Even better, we could create a kind of blood aerosol that could be dispersed over large areas. Think crop dusters, but instead of pesticides, we were essentially weaponizing human biological weirdness. The military brass, what was left of them, were skeptical. Can't blame them. I was presenting a plan that essentially boiled down to, let's spray our blood at the aliens and hope it works. General Karen Thompson, a no-nonsense woman who looked like she could stare down a hurricane, was not impressed. You want me to authorize a planetary defense strategy that involves weaponized blood? Think of it as a biological EMP, Marcus explained. Except the biological part is literally us. Our first test run would be strategic. The Nexus Collective had established a massive technological hub in what used to be Chicago. Total occupation. Millions of humans corralled like cattle, their technology keeping everything under perfect control. We needed a delivery method that could disperse the blood-based disruptor over a large area quickly. Enter Marcus's truly bonkers idea, modified crop dusters and industrial spray systems. We're basically turning humanity into a giant, living bug spray, I muttered. Elena had refined the process by freeze-drying blood samples and creating a fine powder that could be aerosolized. We could maintain the disruptive properties without the logistical nightmare of transporting liquid blood. The plan had multiple layers of complexity. We needed to collect blood donations from populations with the strongest disruptive properties, process and weaponize the samples, develop delivery mechanisms, to coordinate a global counterattack. This is either going to work spectacularly, Marcus said, or be the most embarrassing moment in human military history. Our team acquired old agricultural equipment, industrial sprayers, and anything that could disperse our biological weapon. The crop dusters became our primary assault vehicles. Who would have thought Midwest farming equipment would become humanity's salvation? The Nexus Collective had one critical weakness. Their technology was so advanced, so perfectly calibrated, that any disruption completely paralyzed their systems. Our messy, unpredictable human biology was their kryptonite. Intelligence suggested they had a central control hub in Chicago, a massive technological nexus that controlled their occupation efforts. If we could disrupt that, we might have a chance to throw their entire planetary invasion into chaos. One shot, General Thompson said, reviewing our plans. One shot to prove this isn't the most ridiculous military strategy in human history. I looked at our team, a medical equipment salesman, a high school chemistry teacher, and an immunologist. We were about to attempt something that would either save humanity or become the most spectacular failure in our species' history. Marcus grinned and added another explosion to his increasingly complex strategy diagram. Let's go spray some aliens with human blood. The approach to Chicago looked like something between a military invasion and the world's most bizarre crop dusting operation. It modified agricultural planes, industrial sprayers, and even retrofitted fire trucks lined up along the Indiana border. Our weapons? Thousands of gallons of processed, weaponized human blood. I never thought I'd say this, I muttered into the comm link, but we are literally about to save the world by spraying blood from crop dusters. Marcus's voice crackled back. Technically, aerosolized blood derivative. Let's be precise about our world-saving methodology. The Nexus Collective had Chicago locked down tight. Massive technological tendrils spread across the city like silvery neural networks. Humans were corralled in controlled zones, their movements tracked by systems so advanced they made our pre-invasion surveillance look like a child's game of peekaboo. We had one chance. One moment of absolute beautiful chaos. As our first wave of planes approached, the Nexus defense systems began to activate. Precision energy shields started to crystallize in the air, creating geometric patterns of impossible complexity. Their technology was beautiful, terrifying, absolutely perfect, which made what was about to happen even more satisfying. The first crop duster released its payload, a fine mist of dried blood particles, carefully processed, concentrated from donors with the most potent disruptive properties. For a moment, nothing happened. Then everything happened. The technological shields began to flicker, not collapse. Flicker, like a light bulb with a bad connection. The Nexus units began to move with sudden, jerky motions. Their liquid-mercury bodies suddenly looked less fluid, more mechanical. Direct hit. Elena shouted over the comms. Biological interference is propagating faster than we calculated. I watched through long-range thermal imaging as entire sections of the Nexus technological network began to break down. Not destroyed, not obliterated, but disrupted in a way their perfect, calibrated systems couldn't comprehend. They can't adapt, Marcus explained, his voice a mix of scientific excitement and pure, unadulterated glee. Their technology is so precisely tuned that our biological noise is completely incomprehensible to their systems. Wave after wave of our blood-based aerosols spread across the city. Crop dusters became instruments of liberation. The fire trucks became biological warfare vehicles. And at the center of it all, human unpredictability was our greatest weapon. Nexus combat units began to shut down, not dramatically, not with explosions or grand collapses, but with the technological equivalent of a confused shrug. Their weapons powered down. Their communication networks dissolved. Their perfect, mathematically precise invasion ground to a halt. We're winning, Elena said, her voice a mixture of disbelief and triumph. We're actually winning by being gloriously, magnificently imperfect. The final push came from the ground. As their technological networks collapsed, humans in the controlled zones began to fight back, not with advanced weapons, not with perfect strategies, but with the same messy, unpredictable human spirit that had just saved them. In Chicago's central occupation zone, a Nexus command unit stood motionless. Its mercurial form now looked more like a confused statue than an advanced technological being. Surrounding it, humans emerged, some with makeshift weapons, some with nothing but determination. I couldn't help myself. I started laughing. We just saved the planet, I said into the comm link, by essentially giving the most advanced technological civilization in the universe a biological computer virus. Marcus's response was immediate, technically a protein-based technological disruptor. As the last of the Nexus systems collapsed, humanity stood victorious, and not through superior technology, not through perfect planning, but through the most human of traits, our beautiful, messy, utterly unpredictable nature. Who would have thought human blood would be the ultimate weapon? 6 months after the invasion, the world looked different, not destroyed, not conquered, just weirdly reconfigured. The United Nations had established the Biological Defense Initiative, which was basically a fancy way of saying we're going to study why human blood is apparently the universe's most unexpected weapon. I found myself sitting on a panel of experts, which would have been hilarious if it wasn't so serious. Mr. Reilly, the panel moderator, asked, "How would you describe what happened?" I leaned into the microphone. We basically saved the planet with a biological cheat code most people would have considered a random genetic quirk. Elena Rodriguez, now the lead researcher of the initiative, couldn't help but smile. Marcus was busy drawing another explosion diagram in the margins of his official report. The Nexus Collective hadn't been destroyed, they'd been neutralized. Contained. Their perfect technological civilization had encountered something so fundamentally unpredictable that they'd essentially short-circuited. First contact hadn't been a grand battle of technology, but a cosmic joke about biological randomness. We've confirmed similar protein markers in approximately 73% of human populations, Elena explained during a press conference. What we once considered genetic variation is actually a species-wide defense mechanism. The global response was a mixture of pride, confusion, and absolute bewilderment. Humanity had accidentally developed a biological defense that made our most advanced technological weapons look like children's toys. Marcus summed it up best during a congressional hearing. Imagine spending centuries developing the most perfect technological system in the universe, only to be defeated by human blood. Not even our best blood. Just regular, run-of-the-mill human blood. Scientific papers were written. Documentaries were produced. And somewhere, I was certain, alien civilizations were looking at Earth and thinking, what the actual quantum calculation just happened. The Nexus ships remained in orbit, disabled, but not destroyed. A constant reminder that sometimes the most advanced technology can be defeated by the most unexpected biological quirk. So, I said to Elena and Marcus during our final debrief, we saved humanity by being gloriously, magnificently messy. Marcus grinned and added another explosion to his ever-present diagram. Technically, we saved humanity by being biologically unpredictable. Elena just shook her head. Only humans could turn their genetic randomness into a planetary defense system. As for me, I went back to selling medical equipment. But now, every time I get a paper cut, I can't help but smile. Who knows? Maybe the next alien invasion is just a blood drop away from total failure. The universe, it turns out, has a sense of humor, and humanity just became its favorite punchline.